She found two Lakota boys lost in a blizzard. Their brother came to thank her and never left. Alara lived at the edge of Frostline Valley, where the land looked endless and the sky felt closer than the ground. On this planet, the wind could change its mind in seconds. A calm morning could turn into a white wall before noon. People in the nearby colony said Alara was brave to live alone so far from town, but she did not think of it as bravery. It was simply quieter. Quieter meant fewer questions, fewer memories, and fewer chances for the past to reach out and grab her again. Her ranch was not large, but it was strong. The barn walls were built from insulated panels scavenged from old cargo crates. The water line was buried deep under heated stone. The fence posts were half metal, half old wood, because Alara still liked the look of wood even if it cracked in the cold. She kept a small herd of bio cattle, sturdy animals designed for harsh worlds. They were not pretty, but they were dependable, and dependable things were rare out here. Alara's days followed a simple rhythm: wake before sunrise, check the storm towers on her screen, feed the herd, repair whatever the weather had tried to break during the night. When she needed supplies, she rode into town with her hover saddle and came back before dark. That afternoon, the air felt strange. The horizon had a dull gray line where the clouds met the snowfields, and the wind carried a faint, sharp smell like burned metal. Alara frowned at her wrist display while she stood beside the barn. The storm towers were not warning her about anything serious. The prediction said light snow, nothing more. "Liar," she muttered, because she had learned that machines were confident even when they were wrong. She tightened the straps on a storage crate, then walked toward the old weather mast behind her house. It was one of several towers placed by the first settlers. Most people ignored them now. They were old. They were far away. They were expensive to repair. But Alara kept one of them working, mostly out of habit and stubborn pride. She climbed the ladder and brushed snow off the panel. The mast hummed softly as it pulled power from its buried battery pack. Alara ran a quick check, then paused. A new signal blinked on the edge of the screen. Not a storm warning, a heat signature. Her eyes narrowed. Heat signatures out here usually meant an animal, maybe a lost snow fox or a wandering grazer. Sometimes it meant a traveler, but the nearest travel route was miles away. Still, the marker was moving, slow, irregular, like something stumbling. Then another marker appeared beside it. Alara's stomach tightened. Two heat signatures close together, too small to be adults, too uneven to be animals traveling with purpose. She climbed down fast, boots thudding on the rungs. The wind picked up, pushing a thin sheet of snow across the ground. In the distance, the gray line on the horizon had thickened, rising like a wall. "Not today," Alara said, though she wasn't sure who she was talking to, herself, the sky, or the bad luck that always seemed to follow lonely people. She grabbed her cold-weather coat, thermal gloves, and a small emergency kit. The hover saddle waited in its shed. It was an old model, scratched and patched, but it still ran. Alara powered it up, then set the navigation to the heat signatures. The display warned her the route was unsafe. She ignored it. As she rode out, the ranch disappeared behind drifting snow. The world became pale and quiet, as if someone had wrapped it in cloth. The wind grew louder, and the light faded even though it wasn't yet evening. The storm wall was coming fast. Alara leaned forward, guiding the hover saddle low to the ground. She could not see far, so she relied on her scanner and instinct. The heat signatures flickered, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. That made her heart sink. Flickering meant the bodies were getting colder. She pushed the hover saddle harder. The snow thickened, stinging her face even through her mask. She heard only the wind and the faint engine hum. The scanner showed she was close now, very close. Alara slowed and scanned the white field, searching for any shape that did not belong. For a moment she saw nothing but moving snow. Then she noticed a small dark mound beside a half-buried rock. She cut the engine and stepped off the saddle. The cold hit her immediately, sharp and heavy, like the air itself had weight. She walked toward the mound, boots sinking. Two figures lay curled together in a shallow dip, protected only by the rock and a thin sheet of snow. They were boys, young, maybe 8 and 10, wearing layered clothes that looked handmade. Their cloaks were stitched with simple patterns and their hoods were pulled tight. One boy's glove was missing, his fingers pale. Alara dropped to her knees. "Hey," she said, loud enough to cut through the wind. "Hey, can you hear me?" The older boy's eyes fluttered open. Dark eyes, fear and exhaustion. He tried to speak, but his lips barely moved. Ilara pulled a thermal blanket from her kit and wrapped both boys at once. "Don't talk," she said firmly. "Save your breath." The younger boy shivered so hard his whole body shook. Ilara pressed a heat pack into his chest area through his layers, then another into the older boy's side. The older boy's eyes focused on her face. He swallowed. "We lost," he managed to whisper. "I know," Ilara said. "You're safe now. I'm taking you home." The older boy looked past her as if searching the storm for something. "Brother, Lakota," he said, voice breaking. "He find." Ilara's jaw tightened. A brother out here in this storm meant someone else was in danger too, but she could not chase every ghost in a blizzard. She had 2 living children in front of her, and that had to be enough. She lifted the younger boy first. He was light, lighter than he should have been. Then she helped the older boy stand. His legs wobbled, and Ilara held him steady. Together, they struggled back to the hover saddle. Ilara seated the younger boy in front of her, wrapped in the blanket. The older boy sat behind her, arms weakly holding on. Ilara set the engine to steady and turned back toward her ranch. The storm tried to swallow them, but Ilara refused to let it. She followed her own marker signal, keeping the saddle low, fighting the wind. By the time she reached home, the sky had turned into one endless swirl. Snow piled against the barn and the fence. Ilara guided the saddle into the shed, then carried the boys inside her house. Her home was small, one main room with a stove, a kitchen corner, and a sleeping area. The warmth hit them like a wave. The boys blinked, dazed, as if they had forgotten what warmth felt like. Ilara moved fast. She placed them near the stove, not too close, and wrapped them in thicker blankets. She heated water, mixed a simple broth packet, and poured it into cups. "Small sips," she told them, helping the younger boy hold the cup. "Slow, don't rush." The older boy watched her hands like he was memorizing every motion. His cheeks were red from cold, his eyelashes clumped with melted snow. He looked older than he should, the way children look when they have learned too early that the world does not promise safety. "What are your names?" Ilara asked gently. The older boy hesitated, then said, "Kaya." The younger boy whispered, "Nico." Ilara nodded. "I'm Ilara. You're going to stay here until the storm passes." Kaya's eyes sharpened at the word storm, as if he suddenly remembered the danger outside. "Lakota," he said again, more urgently. "He come." Ilara stirred the broth and tried to keep her voice calm. "Your brother is strong," Kaya nodded. "Strong, smart, he track, he no stop." Ilara looked toward the small window. Snow slapped against the glass in soft bursts. No one should be traveling now, not even a strong, smart brother. "He'll need shelter," Ilara said quietly. Kaya held his cup with both hands. "He find us," he said, like it was not a hope but a rule. Ilara had lived long enough to know hope could be dangerous, but she also knew something else. People who loved each other did impossible things. She had seen it once long ago before she decided to live alone. She set her cup down and stood. "I'm going to check the sensors," she said. "You two stay by the stove." She moved to her wall panel and opened the external feed. The camera outside showed nothing but white movement. The storm towers still refused to admit the blizzard was serious. Ilara wanted to throw the screen across the room. Then a new signal blinked, not the boy's signal. A third heat signature farther out, moving fast. Ilara's breath caught. The signature was larger, adult-sized, and it moved with purpose, not stumbling. It was coming straight toward her ranch. Behind her, Kaya noticed her stillness. "He here?" Kaya asked softly. Ilara did not answer right away. She listened. The wind roared, but beneath it she heard something else, faint, steady, like a low engine. Then the sound grew louder. A shape appeared in the outside camera feed, a dark figure cutting through the white. The figure moved like someone who knew the land and did not fear it. A cloak snapped in the wind. A mounted device, part horse-like, part machine, pushed forward with strong legs. The figure stopped at Ilara's door. For a second, everything was still except the storm. Then there was a knock, not weak, not polite. A firm knock, as if the hand on the other side had decided this door would open. Ilara's heart hammered. She stepped forward, one hand near the latch, the other holding her breath. Kaya stood behind her, eyes wide but shining with relief. Ilara opened the door. A tall man stood in the storm, snow clinging to his shoulders and hood. His clothing was layered and practical, mixed with traditional patterns stitched into modern fabric. A metal collar piece protected his neck. His eyes were dark and sharp, scanning the room in one fast sweep. His gaze landed on the boys by the stove. The tension in his body shifted instantly like a bowstring releasing. He stepped inside, shutting the storm out behind him. His voice was low, steady, and full of restrained emotion. Kaya, Nico. The boys moved, half running, half stumbling toward him. The man dropped to one knee and pulled them into his arms. For a moment, he held them as if he had been carrying the fear of losing them in his chest and could finally set it down. Ilara watched, frozen in place, unsure whether she had just brought safety into her house, or the beginning of something she wasn't ready for. The man looked up at her, still holding his brothers. His expression was guarded, but there was a clear weight behind his eyes, relief, gratitude, and something else, something sharp like responsibility. "Thank you," he said. "I am Lakota." Ilara nodded slowly. "They were freezing out there," she replied. "You shouldn't have come in this storm." Lakota's eyes stayed on her, steady and serious. "I had to," he said. The stove crackled. The storm pressed against the windows. The small room felt suddenly too small for the force of the man standing in it. Lakota rose to his feet, his brothers still close to him. He looked around the house, noting the supplies, the old ranch tools, the weather panel on the wall, the way Ilara lived like someone prepared for everything and expecting nothing. Then he said something that made Ilara's chest tighten, because it sounded less like a simple thank you and more like a promise. "I will repay this," Lakota said. "I will not forget." Outside, the wind howled louder, as if the planet itself was warning them that this night was not over yet. The storm did not slow after Lakota arrived. Instead, it grew stronger, wrapping the ranch in endless white noise. Snow pushed against the windows like waves against a ship, and the wind made the walls hum softly. Inside, the small house felt warm but tense, as if it understood that strangers had entered and something important had begun. Ilara placed another log into the stove and watched the flames rise. She had learned to read people the same way she read weather patterns, by small movements, by silence, by the way they looked at a room when they thought no one was watching. Lakota stood near the door at first, careful, alert, as if he expected danger to follow him inside. Kaya and Nico stayed close to him, their earlier weakness fading now that warmth and safety surrounded them. The younger boy leaned against Lakota's side, eyes heavy with sleep. Kaya sat upright, trying to appear strong, but his shoulders relaxed slowly as the heat reached him. "You should sit," Ilara said gently. Lakota hesitated, then nodded once. He moved toward the table but chose a chair that allowed him to see both the door and the window. Ilara noticed the habit but said nothing. People who traveled harsh lands often kept such instincts. She handed him a cup of hot broth. He accepted it with quiet thanks. For a while, only the sound of the storm and the crackle of the stove filled the room. Finally, Lakota spoke. "They told me you found them on the ice." "Yes," Ilara said. "Their signals showed on my scanner. They were lucky." Lakota looked down at his brothers. "Luck and courage," he said softly. Kaya smiled faintly at that, clearly proud. Ilara leaned against the counter. "Your tribe travels far from here," she said. "I haven't seen your people this close to the valley before." Lakota nodded slowly. "We follow the changing routes. The ice shifts every season. The animals change their paths. We move with them." His words were calm, but Ilara sensed deeper meaning beneath them. She had heard stories about the Lakota travelers, how they carried old traditions into new worlds, how they balanced technology with ancient ways. "You tracked them through this storm?" she asked. "Yes," he replied simply. She glanced toward the window again, imagining the journey he must have taken. Even with advanced equipment, traveling in a blizzard like this was dangerous. Yet he had done it without hesitation. "Why were they alone?" she asked carefully. Lakota's expression tightened slightly. "A sudden whiteout separated us. Visibility fell to nothing. I told them to stay still, but the wind changed direction. When I reached their last position, they were gone." He paused, then added quietly, "I feared I would not find them in time." Kaya looked at him with wide eyes. "But you did." Lakota placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Because someone helped." Ilara shifted uncomfortably at the attention. She had not gone out to be a hero. She had simply followed a signal. The night grew deeper. Ilara prepared simple food, and they ate together in silence that felt surprisingly easy. The storm outside made the house feel like a small island floating in endless white. After the boys fell asleep near the stove, wrapped in blankets, Lakota stood and began checking the door seals and window edges. He moved with quiet purpose, adjusting small things without asking, reinforcing weak spots with quick skill. "You don't have to do that," Ilara said. I know, he replied, but I prefer to help. She watched him for a moment, then nodded. It had been a long time since someone else moved through her house as if they belonged there. Your ranch is strong, he said after a while. You maintain it well. Ilara gave a small shrug. It's what I know. He studied her briefly. You live alone? Yes, he did not ask why. For that, she felt grateful. The storm towers suddenly flickered on the wall panel. Ilara stepped closer and opened the feed. A warning symbol blinked, unusual energy readings several kilometers away. That's strange, she murmured. Lakota joined her, his eyes narrowing at the screen. Not natural. I don't think so, she said. Could be equipment interference. He remained silent, but his posture changed slightly, becoming more alert. Is something wrong? She asked. He hesitated before answering. We noticed unfamiliar machines near the northern ridge 2 days ago. Large vehicles, not from the colony. Ilara frowned. Mining crews. Possibly. Her stomach tightened. Mining companies had little respect for isolated ranchers. They claimed land quickly and left damage behind. If they come here, they'll need permission, she said, though she knew such rules often meant little. Lakota met her gaze calmly. Some people believe permission is unnecessary if they believe the land belongs to them. Ilara understood the weight behind his words. She had heard similar stories before. The wind rattled the roof suddenly, shaking loose snow that slid down in heavy waves. The boys stirred in their sleep but did not wake. Lakota moved closer to the window and looked out into the storm. His silhouette against the pale light felt strong and steady, like a mountain refusing to move. You carry sadness, he said quietly without turning. Ilara blinked, surprised. That's an odd thing to say. It is something I recognize, he replied simply. She hesitated, then gave a small, tired smile. Living alone makes it easier not to explain things, Lakota nodded. My people believe silence is also a form of healing. They stood there for a moment, sharing the quiet. Hours passed. The storm slowly lost its fury, though snow still fell steadily. Ilara finally convinced Lakota to rest, offering him a blanket near the stove. He accepted reluctantly, clearly unused to letting his guard down. In the early morning, pale light filtered through the window. The storm had softened, leaving deep drifts outside. Ilara stepped onto the porch to check the damage. The air felt sharp but calm, the sky beginning to clear. She heard footsteps behind her. Lakota joined her, his breath forming faint clouds. Thank you again, he said, for saving them. She shook her head. Anyone would have done the same. He studied her expression carefully. Not everyone. They looked across the frozen valley together. The snow glittered under weak sunlight, beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Suddenly, a distant hum broke the silence. Ilara turned sharply. The sound came from above, low and mechanical. She shielded her eyes and looked toward the sky. A small drone moved across the horizon, scanning slowly. That's not from the colony, she said. Lakota's eyes hardened. The machines I mentioned. The drone paused briefly, then shifted direction toward the ranch. Ilara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Looks like we're not the only ones interested in this land, she said quietly. Lakota's posture straightened, calm but ready. Then we must decide how to respond. The drone circled once, its sensors flashing faintly before it moved away again, disappearing into the distance. Ilara exhaled slowly. I don't like that. Neither do I, Lakota said. Behind them, Kaya's voice called from inside, full of sleepy excitement. The storm is gone. Ilara turned back toward the house, watching the boys waking with smiles now that danger felt far away. But as she stepped inside, she could not shake the feeling that something had changed. The storm had brought Lakota and his brothers into her life, but it had also brought new eyes watching from above. And for the first time since she chose to live alone, Ilara felt certain that her quiet ranch was about to become the center of something much bigger than she had ever planned. Morning light spread slowly across Frostline Valley, turning the snow into a wide field of silver and pale blue. The storm had passed, but its marks remained everywhere. Snowdrifts leaned against the barn, fence posts were half buried, and the distant hills looked softer under fresh layers of white. Ilara stood near the ranch gate, checking the damage. She moved carefully, pushing snow aside with a long tool while scanning the sky every few minutes. The drone from earlier had disappeared, but she could not forget the sound of its engine. Behind her, Lakota worked quietly beside the barn, clearing ice from a damaged water pipe. His movements were calm and efficient. Kaya and Nico followed him like small shadows, eager to help even if they mostly watched. The ranch no longer felt empty. For years, Alara had lived in silence broken only by wind and machinery. Now there were voices, footsteps, and laughter. She was not sure whether the change felt comforting or frightening. "You watch the sky often," Takoda said as he approached her. "I learned long ago that danger rarely announces itself politely," she replied. He nodded. "That is true." They stood side by side looking across the valley. The snow reflected sunlight so brightly that it almost hurt to look at. "Ilara," he said after a moment, "the drone means they are mapping this area. They will come," she sighed. "Mining crews don't waste time once they find something valuable." Takoda's gaze remained steady. "What lies beneath this land?" She shrugged slightly. "Ice, rock, maybe minerals, nothing I care about, but companies care about anything that can be sold." Takoda remained silent, as if deciding whether to share something important. Finally, he spoke. "My people believe this valley is not ordinary." Alara turned toward him. "What do you mean?" He looked toward the distant ridge. "Long ago, our elders found structures beneath the ice, not built by humans, old, very old. They respond to certain sounds and movements." She raised an eyebrow. "Alien ruins," he nodded slowly. "We do not disturb them. We believe they maintain balance in this region." Alara thought about the strange energy readings from the night before. If mining crews start drilling, they could awaken something dangerous, Takoda finished quietly. The idea made her uneasy. She had always trusted science and practical thinking, but she had also seen enough strange things on frontier worlds to know that unknown did not mean impossible. Kaya ran toward them, breathless. "Food ready?" Alara smiled despite herself. "Good timing." They returned to the house together. Inside, warmth filled the air. Nico proudly showed off a simple meal he had helped prepare. For a moment, everything felt normal, like a family sharing breakfast after a long storm, but the peace did not last long. A distant rumble shook the ground faintly. Alara froze. That was not wind. She rushed to the window. Far across the valley, dark shapes moved slowly over the snow, large vehicles leaving deep tracks behind them. "They came fast," she said quietly. Takoda stepped beside her, eyes sharp. "Yes." The boys fell silent, sensing the tension. Alara activated her communication panel. A signal request flashed briefly, then connected. A clear voice filled the room. "Attention. This area has been marked for resource evaluation by Northern Star Extraction. All independent settlers must prepare for relocation within 72 hours. Alara stared at the screen. "Relocation? They can't just—" The message repeated, cold and official. Takoda's expression darkened. "They do not ask, they declare." Alara clenched her jaw. "This is my land. I've lived here for years." "Then they may consider you an obstacle," he said quietly. She turned away from the screen, anger rising in her chest. She had built this place with her own hands. She had chosen isolation to escape loss, not to be pushed aside by strangers chasing profit. "What do we do?" Kaya asked softly. Alara forced herself to breathe slowly. "First, we stay calm," Takoda nodded. "And we learn their intentions." Outside, the vehicles continued moving, stopping near the ridge. Mechanical arms unfolded and tall scanning towers rose into the air. The ground vibrated again. Alara grabbed her coat. "I need to see this up close." Takoda stepped forward immediately. "I go with you." She hesitated but nodded. "The boys stay here." Kaya looked ready to protest, but one look from Takoda made him obey. Alara and Takoda mounted the hover saddle together, riding toward the ridge while keeping distance. As they approached, the size of the machines became clear, huge drills, scanning lights, and hovering drones mapping every inch of the land. A group of workers stood nearby, wearing heavy suits marked with corporate symbols. Alara slowed the saddle. They didn't waste time. Takoda watched silently. Suddenly, one of the scanning towers emitted a bright pulse. The snow beneath it glowed faintly for a moment, then faded. Alara's scanner beeped rapidly. "Energy spike," she said. Takoda's face grew serious. "The structures are responding." The ground trembled again, stronger this time. Snow slid down nearby slopes. "We need to leave," Alara said quickly. They turned the saddle and rode back toward the ranch. Behind them, another pulse of light rose into the sky, faint but visible even in daylight. Back at the house, Kaya and Nico rushed outside to meet them. "What happened?" Kaya asked. Alara exchanged a look with Takoda. "Things just got complicated." Takoda knelt in front of the boys. You must listen carefully. The machines may disturb the old structures. That could cause great danger. Nico's eyes widened. Like the storms? Perhaps worse, Takoda said gently. Alara felt a strange mix of fear and determination. She had lived alone for so long, avoiding conflict, avoiding connection. But now she saw clearly that running away would not save anything, not her home, not the land, not the people standing beside her. She looked at Takoda. If they're going to destroy this place, we can't just watch. He met her gaze calmly. Then we stand together. The words felt simple, but they carried weight. For the first time in years, Alara felt part of something larger than herself. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the valley. In the distance, the mining machines continued their work, unaware that they had already awakened forces beneath the ice. And as night began to fall, faint glowing patterns appeared far across the snow, lines of light forming slowly under the surface. Like something ancient was waking, and watching night fell slowly over Frostline Valley, but it was not a normal night. The snow did not look soft and peaceful anymore. Beneath the surface, faint lines of light moved like quiet rivers flowing under ice. The glow was not bright enough to blind the eyes, but it was strong enough to make the valley feel alive. Alara stood outside her ranch house, staring toward the distant ridge where the mining machines had set up their towers. The cold air pressed against her face, but she barely noticed it. What she felt instead was a deep vibration under her boots, like a slow heartbeat rising from the frozen ground. Takoda stepped beside her, his expression calm but serious. Kaya and Nico stood a few steps behind them, holding each other's hands. It has begun, Takoda said quietly. Alara swallowed. The energy readings are rising fast. If those drills go deeper, they may trigger something we cannot stop, he finished. A sudden bright pulse flashed across the ridge. The sky above the machines shimmered faintly, like heat waves rising from invisible fire. The ground trembled harder this time. Snow slid from rooftops and the barn walls creaked. Inside the house, the communication panel suddenly activated. A sharp alarm tone filled the room. Alara rushed inside and opened the feed. A corporate representative appeared on screen, his face calm but tense. Unstable energy patterns have been detected, the man said. All non-authorized residents must evacuate immediately. Alara stared at him in disbelief. You caused the instability. We are conducting controlled extraction, he replied smoothly. If you remain, you do so at your own risk. The screen went dark. Takoda stepped in behind her. They will not stop. Alara clenched her fists. Then we make them stop. She moved quickly, pulling up her own sensor network. Years ago, she had connected old storm towers across the valley. Most people thought they were useless now, but Alara had never abandoned them. She rerouted their signals, linking them together. What are you doing? Kaya asked. I'm amplifying the natural energy readings, she said. If the corporation sees proof that this land is unstable, they may pull back. Takoda's eyes sharpened with understanding. The structures respond to sound. Alara looked at him. Then we use that. Takoda nodded and turned to the boys. Come. They stepped outside into the cold night. The glowing lines beneath the snow had grown brighter now, stretching in wide circles across the valley floor. The air felt charged, almost electric. Takoda stood tall and closed his eyes. Kaya and Nico moved beside him. Together they began a low chant, soft at first, then stronger. The sound was steady and rhythmic, carried by the cold wind. Alara watched in awe. As the chant rose, the glowing lines under the ice reacted. They brightened and shifted, forming larger patterns that stretched toward the ridge. Far away, one of the mining towers flickered. Alara rushed back to her console and activated a wide broadcast channel. She connected her storm towers to transmit live energy data across colony networks. If the company wants proof, she muttered, they're going to get it. On the ridge, machines began to malfunction. Sparks flew from scanning arms. One drill suddenly shut down with a heavy metallic groan. Workers ran between vehicles trying to stabilize equipment. The ground shook harder now. Inside the house, dishes rattled. Snow fell from ceiling beams, but the ranch stood strong. Outside, Takoda's chant grew louder. Kaya and Nico followed his rhythm perfectly. The glowing lines under the valley formed a massive circular pattern, rising slowly into the air like threads of light. Alara stepped outside again, breath caught in her throat. Above the ridge, a towering shape of light began to form, an outline of something ancient and powerful. It was not solid, not physical, but it was clear enough to be seen even from far away. The mining vehicles stopped completely. Moments later, a corporate transport ship appeared in the sky, hovering above the ridge. Its lights scanned the glowing formation below. Ilara's broadcast continued sending live footage across every nearby channel. Settlers in the colony watched from their homes. Scientists began sending urgent messages. The transport ship lowered closer, but when its lights touched the glowing structure, the air pulsed sharply. The ship jerked backward slightly, as if pushed by an invisible force. Lakota lowered his voice, letting the chant fade slowly. The glowing structure remained in the sky for several long seconds, then began to settle back into the ice. Silence followed. Then the corporate transport's voice filled the valley through amplified speakers. All extraction operations are suspended pending further investigation. Ilara exhaled slowly, feeling her knees grow weak with relief. The mining vehicles powered down. Workers began retreating toward transport units. Within minutes, the heavy machines started pulling back from the ridge. The valley grew quiet again, except for the soft hum of fading energy beneath the snow. Lakota turned toward Ilara. The wind lifted the edge of his cloak, but his eyes were calm now. "You defended this land," he said. Ilara shook her head gently. "We did." Kaya ran forward, smiling widely. "They are leaving," Nico laughed, the sound bright and clear in the cold air. Ilara looked across the valley one more time. The glowing lines had faded completely, leaving only smooth snow under moonlight. Morning arrived slowly. The corporate vehicles were gone. Only faint tracks remained near the ridge, already filling with fresh snow. Scientists from the colony sent official notices declaring the valley a protected zone due to unstable ancient energy structures. The corporation had no choice but to withdraw. Ilara stood outside her ranch house with Lakota beside her. The air felt different now, lighter, calmer. "You could return to your people," she said quietly. Lakota looked at the rising sun over the snowfields. "They will continue traveling, but my brothers are safe here." Ilara hesitated. "And you?" He met her gaze steadily. "I came to thank you. I did not expect to find purpose." Her heart beat a little faster. The boys were already chasing each other near the barn, their laughter echoing across the valley. "This place no longer feels empty," Lakota continued. Ilara smiled softly. "It hasn't for a while." Snow glittered under sunlight. The storm damage was already being repaired. The ranch stood strong, no longer just a symbol of isolation, but of connection and shared strength. Lakota stepped closer. "If you allow it," he said calmly, "I would remain to help protect this land. To help build something lasting." Ilara looked around her home, the barn, the stove pipe rising into the clear sky, the endless frozen valley that once felt too large for one person. For years, she had believed survival meant standing alone. Now she understood something different. Strength could also mean standing together. She nodded slowly. "Then stay." The wind moved gently across the plains, no longer harsh, no longer threatening. The valley rested peacefully under bright morning light. And for the first time in many years, Ilara did not feel alone at the edge of the world.